quarterback is what we're looking at here in New England. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we know who the top three guys are, but JJ McCarthy was in town yesterday. He's kind of become the de facto fourth here. You've got him rated as a first, second round guy, but there's a possibility he ends up going fourth overall, perhaps as high as that. What do you think of McCarthy overall, and would he be overpicked if he goes that high in the draft?
Would he be overpicked? No, because there's a quarterback tax. Unless you're picking with one of those first three picks, chances are you're going to have to draft a quarterback earlier than you have him graded. That's just the quarterback tax. It happens every year. Now, time will tell if it was worth doing that. But let's be honest, if you're okay drafting a quarterback with the 18th overall pick, you probably should be okay drafting him with the fourth overall pick or wherever J.J. McCarthy ends up going. Is there a risk involved? Absolutely. There's risk with all these quarterbacks. And, if we have 5 quarterbacks drafted in the first round this year, history tells us that at least 3 of them probably won't work out, won't pan out to live up to where they were drafted. And with the case with J.J. McCarthy, he has actually had the same exact grade since June for me. Going back to my initial top 50 in the summer, he was like 21st, 22nd, around there overall. And I was hoping to see – so I was a big fan of him going back to the summer, but even this season I was hoping to see more from him just to answer some of the questions. But you know what? It's just not the way that offense was built. And who am I to argue? They won a national title doing it the way they did it. But when Michigan needed a play on third down, fourth down especially, J.J. McCarthy was able to step up and make something happen. So is there a little bit of a leap of faith here, a little more projection involved? There's no doubt. But when you look at the skills, the physical skill set, then you look at the how smart he is, the intangible factor, the athleticism, what he can do with his legs. You like the package of skills. It's just, okay, what do we think he's going to look like 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now? It's going to take a little bit of looking into a crystal ball to feel good about drafting him in the top 5. So, yeah, even though, for me, he graded as more of a late first, early second, somewhere in the 20s on my overall board, he's going to be a top 6 pick. And it wouldn't be totally shocking if he is drafted before a Jaden Daniels or a Drake May, just because I think we have to remember take the word consensus and throw it out. There's no such thing when it comes to the NFL draft, and especially true with quarterbacks. And so if there's a team picking in a top 4 that has J.J. McCarthy as the second or third best quarterback, it wouldn't be completely shocking.
Dane, I wanted to ask you about some of the secondary quarterbacks. Obviously, those top 4 we've talked a lot about. We'll add Nix and Penix into that. But beyond those 6, let's say there's a scenario the Patriots and wind up getting blown away and trade down and look for a quarterback in the later rounds. Is there one guy that stands out to you, maybe as a third-round pick or, even later than that?
Spencer Rattler from South Carolina has a lot of ability. Some of the reactions to pressure and just the overall consistency needs to improve. But, again, that's why we're talking about third, fourth round type of players. You're sacrificing something. And with Spencer Rattler, it's just overall consistency. But he has the mechanics. He has the arm talent. So if you're betting on a player like this, as long as you're okay with, the interview process and the person, I can understand why teams are going to look at Spencer Rattler and say, okay, we have something here. We have a base. We have a foundation to work with, and our coaches can get the rest out of him. I would throw Michael Pratt in there as well from Tulane, 6'2.5", 217 pounds. He was a big-time baseball player growing up and, really made that transition to football as a quarterback. And there's a lot to like about who he is now, but also a guy that's going to get better and better. A fourth-year senior, still just 22 years old, still has a lot of room to grow. So I think he's going to come in, be a backup somewhere, and then eventually compete for starting reps. And he'll probably be somewhere in that late third, early fourth round discussion.
Spencer Rattler, how tall is he? Is he just right around 6 feet?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just over 6 foot, 210 pounds. So he's short. He's not small, but he's shorter than ideal. And he's not the best athlete. He's a 4'9", 40 type of athlete. So, yeah, you're sacrificing a little on the size, a little bit on just overall athlete, and again, the consistency. But you really do he has the arm talent, as good at arm talent as anybody in the draft. And the mechanics are repeatable. They're consistent. It's just about the overall consistency, reacting to pressure, and making the right decision and staying on schedule.
I do appreciate and enjoy some of the weaknesses that you write about among the players. Rattler is one of them, where he had a reputation for rubbing people the wrong way. And so there's things to think about, because even with Caleb Williams, you see what he can do on the field, and you see what these guys, some of them obviously have talent-wise and the physicality, but there are these questions that, especially, here on, in these formats, we end up talking about. It's like, all right, he can play. All these guys can play, but is he going to rub you the wrong way? Is he going to be somebody you're going to want to root for and you're going to be happy with just personally that they end up picking up? So I'm glad you don't shy away from some of that stuff.
But, it's tough, because from my perspective, a lot of what I get is secondhand, from scouts or coaches or other players, and so it's always a dicey proposition when I determine, okay, what is relevant, what's not, what should be included in here. I don't want to kill the kid. I don't want to include something that's absolutely going to hurt his credibility or anything like that, in terms of, when fans read this and say, oh, well, he's this, this, and this. Okay, well, I don't want anything to do with him. And, so it's always a fine line at trying to figure out what to include, what not to include. And, but if it's relevant, if it's something that teams are talking about, teams are debating, then it's important to include, because if a player's got second round talent, but then say he doesn't go until the third or fourth round, okay, well, maybe you go back to the report and say, oh, okay, well, his interviews didn't go very well, and on the whiteboard he wasn't very clean, and so because of that, maybe that was the reason why he fell a round or two later than most people projected.
Let's talk tackles. If the Patriots get their quarterback third overall, maybe one of the positions of need they go at in the top of the second round is tackle. Who might be available around then who's a legit starting tackle going into the league?
In terms of legit starting tackles right away, there's not a ton of those guys. We're going to see a run on tackles early in the top 20, top 25, 6, 7 of these guys. And then I do think there's a little bit of a drop-off. And that drop-off is because you're going from guys that are ready to play pretty quickly to guys that are going to need time to develop. A player like Kingsley Suamatia from BYU, former 5-star, Penei Sewell's cousin, there's a lot of things that you point to and say, okay, that'll work. That's something we can work with, but it's going to take time for him to develop and, get to the point where you feel comfortable with him outside, blocking your quarterback's blind side, or just being on the field and working in concert with the 4 other offensive linemen. So he's in that mix. Patrick Paul from Houston, Roger Rosengarten from Washington. I mean, I do think there are tackles that are potential future starters in the NFL, but there is a little bit of a drop-off after those first-round guys in terms of players ready to step in from day one and really be someone you can rely on quickly.
So I'm with Ryan on the quarterback tackle combination, but moving a little bit further down, we've heard a lot about the wide receiver crop and how deep it is. Dane, maybe a third-round kind of a guy. Can you still get, maybe a solid contributor or an immediate contributor in the third round at wide receiver?
Yeah, I think so. And wide receiver is going to be a deep position the rest of our lives. I'm convinced. It's just, if you're not a quarterback, you're not good enough to be a quarterback growing up, you're going to be a receiver. If you're, one of the best athletes, and, those are the guys that score points in today's modern day NFL. Those are the stars. And so this year we're going to see 3 guys go top 10. They look like future stars, number 1 type of receivers. And then we're going to see a couple more go in the first round, and then a lot more go in the second round. And we might have 13, 14, maybe 15 receivers off the board in the first 2 rounds. Wow. But even then, I don't think the cupboard will be bare. There will be other receivers looking at it in that third round. And, my 7-round mock draft comes out tomorrow on The Athletic. And I'm the same line of thinking with you guys. I've got a quarterback going third overall. I've got an offensive tackle at 34, and then at 68 in the early third round, I have the Patriots going with the receiver. And I do think there will be some pretty good receiving talents there. If you're looking at a Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky, maybe a Troy Franklin from Oregon, Jalen Polk, Washington. I think there will be several worthy candidates there at receiver if they do wait till the third round to address the position.
If you like that clip, and how could you not? Check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. Point slightly up and to the left. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. Point slightly down and to the left. And for the latest from the Sports Hub, download at 985thesportshub.com.